Welcome to the Planet Pulse Pacific podcast. My name is Ben Adelberg, joined by my co-host Abby Patterson, and we're coming to you from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, Tēnei ka mihi ki te mana, whenua o Aotearoa. We acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners, custodians, and local tribal authorities from wherever you may be listening to us.
Wearing many hats as an ocean educator, leader, TEDx speaker, former athlete, and now counsellor is the incredible Glanznig, and I'm excited to hear how he makes it all happen. Welcome, Cal.
So great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cal, to get the show underway, can you tell us a little bit about your passion for water sports in general, indoor and outdoor, and the connection to the environment?
Yeah, I love that. So as Abby said, I love the introduction. As a former athlete, I feel like my brother's still in the Australian water polo team, so I sort of cheer him on from the sidelines. But my background has been in aquatic sports, so just loving getting in the ocean, nippers, swimming. My childhood was just full of surfing and just as much activities as I could do. But what I really fell in love with was the sport of water polo, which is, for anyone listening at home, it is known as the world's toughest sport. And I feel like it taught me a lot of different things with resilience and just goal setting and just focusing on what's in your control. So it was a really exciting journey that I went on as a athlete through my high school and uni years, competing across the world at world championships and having a very great time playing at very high levels and getting concussed a few times as you do in the sport. But what ultimately led me on the path that I am now was actually a water polo training session where the training session got cancelled because as we got in the water and started swimming and started passing the balls in the bay that we were training in, there was just so much plastic pollution in the water that the coach cancelled the session and said, all right, training's over, everyone get out. And that just really highlighted to me the, problem of plastic in the ocean. And I guess that thread that I've been pulling has led me to do all the work that I'm doing now.
You've had a lot of work in the advocacy space over the years. Do you want to talk about where that started for you, maybe at school or as a kid?
Yeah, so the first journey I sort of went on in high school. So I was 15 as we all sort of learn about climate change, learn about all the different challenges the planet's going through for the first time. And for me, I was super concerned, as a lot of us are, when we sort of presented this picture of here's the future of the planet, off to maths. And I just remember thinking that day, surely I can do something. And again, that probably athlete mindset a little bit of maybe I can't change the whole world, but what's within my own control, what's within my own circle of influence. And I was doing a lot of research and I was thinking, all right, well, what could I do to make my school a little bit more sustainable? So I decided to try to get solar panels installed at my high school. Took me a good couple years to get it going and ended up fundraising $50,000 and the state government matched it with $50,000 and so $100,000 and became the first student in Australia to get solar panels at my high school. And that was this firstly aha moment of wow, what a great ability to sort of set your mind to something and get a result. But also what was really interesting was from that win that we got, a lot of people started reaching out about how did a teenager do this? And it got picked up by the ABC and a lot of media. And I created a framework that helped over 20 schools follow suit. So there's well over $1 million of solar in New South Wales high schools that have sort of been, inspired or I've helped with from my own experience. So it just highlighted, I guess, the network effects and the ripples that our actions do create. And yes, we are creating change in our own world, but that sense of agency, that ability to sort of build this raft, to sort of set sail towards a better future, it will inspire people around you and it will sort of ripple out to places that you don't even know. So that was sort of my first experience when I was a teenager. And right off the back of that, I was in between the sort of high school and university and had that experience with plastic in my own local bay just before I started university. And then I started Plastic Free Cronulla and sort of went on a quest to tackle plastic in my own local community. And that then trickled up to getting plastic banned, a lot of key items banned in New South Wales, the largest state and the best state in Australia. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners being like, oh, that's not true. No. And then, led me to get involved in some international youth advisory councils like World Ocean Day and got involved in designing this massive World Ocean Day that happens June 8th every year. And then off the back of that, invited to go to the UN climate conference and speak over in Egypt. And that, I guess, experience of sort of the high school, the Plastic Free Cronulla just led me to this global stage where I just realized that firstly, how important young people are to creating change, how global and how wicked these problems are. But ultimately, all change starts at home and all change starts within your own circle of influence. And I wanted to really just understand, what we could do to take action. And went on a bit of a journey to make a documentary to learn and skill up myself. And it's led to some other random things now, coming back from filming and then getting elected into local council as the youngest ever independent councillor where I live in the Sutherland Shire. So involved in local government and then starting Blue Minds and the work I'm doing with Surface for Climate. And then it's been a very, very fun journey since, but that's sort of where it all started back in high school and back in that first level of concern that I felt.
Now, you glazed over it a little bit, but let's just ask the question. You're a filmmaker rising up. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to do that documentary.
I mean, the biggest thing that inspires me with all of my work, there's sort of two things. I was chatting about it today to someone. It's like the love I have for my own community and like the love. So I grew up and still live in Cronulla, a beautiful coastal town of Sydney. And I just love this area so much and love, the culture and, everything that my community has. But the other sort of like big driver of my why and behind everything I do is the love that I have for the Pacific region and the love that I've seen a lot of Pacifica people have for their own backyards and communities. And that was the big driver for rising up, was going to COP in Egypt and meeting young people from Tuvalu, the Marshall Islands, from Samoa, all over the region, and just realizing the mindset and resilience and grit. And, there's no alternative to the work that they're doing and the incredible wins and advocacy and the punching above their weight that they bring into this sort of global climate and global environment space, and the positivity a little bit as well. Like it's done through a place of love. And that's what I really wanted to try to highlight with Rising Up, because I do think there is that cultural difference between young Australians that want to, be these change makers and, make a difference, but often do it from a place of fear or a place of anger, where I feel like a lot of the Pacifica people that I've connected with do it from a real place of love and that real grounding for their own community. So with Rising Up, no experience in filmmaking, thought I'd give it a crack to try to make a documentary, and extremely grateful to have the support of Take 3 for the Sea, who helped produce it, Rising Up, and got to travel to Tuvalu and experience climate change with my own eyes, and travel out to remote coral atolls and snorkel with turtles and just experience how beautiful this Pacific region is and how important it is to save it, and why we need to stick to 1.5 degrees warming. So that was, went to Samoa as well. And again, it's that beautiful love and that, that mindset, and then filmed across Australia as well. So that was the journey behind making Rising Up. And it was, really incredible to release that the start of 2024, and then sort of full circle. Like I can share more about the impact that the film's had, but the full circle for me was then having the documentary played at COP30 in Brazil last year, and being able to showcase it in the Australia Pavilion and actually have people involved in the film as on the panel and sort of sharing their Pacific stories through, the Australian government channels, which is something that I'm really passionate about. How do I sort of elevate and raise awareness to what's happening across the region? Because for a lot of Australians, we actually don't know what's happening in countries like Tuvalu, and you don't know what you don't see. And when I did a lot of Q&As and different festivals with the film last year and in 2024, I sort of asked the question during the panel, like, who here's heard of Tuvalu? And, it's about a third a lot of the time. So if we don't know, firstly, our neighbouring country, what they're going through, how are we acting with that urgency and that intent to actually do what's in the best interest for this region if we actually don't know what's happening through it? So I feel extremely grateful with the role that I play as with Blue Minds, and, speaking to a lot of people, and also through the film and reaching many more people than I can physically reach in person, to be able to, platform those stories and I guess inspire people to join the fight and to join the movement and join the incredible work of what our neighbours across the region are doing.
The impact that this documentary's had on other people is really amazing, and it's really cool to hear the things that you've said about the impact it's had on others. Are there any sort of messages that you have taken away from it in the process of making, or in your day-to-day life, that lessons that you learned from other parts of the world and their approach?
I think there's probably two messages that I think I said before, like focus on changing your own world. And the biggest thing that, again, like looking at these big global challenges, you can always just think, well, what's the point? I can't change the world. And that's the mindset that so many of us are in. And we just expect someone else to solve it. We just think it's already too late. But the future is unwritten. And yes, there is so much that is already baked in. But every action that we do take is that ripple effect, is that butterfly effect that our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, all these future generations will be able to enjoy the fruits of our labor, because we live in literally the most important time in recent, probably all of human history, to be honest. And we have the biggest gift with everything that we've got, all the tools at our disposal to really drive that impact and change. And so coming back and filming and interviewing, incredible founders and young people on the front lines, and just all these huge diverse people sort of stepping up for all these different challenges that our region's facing, I then was really inspired to really take that leap of faith and give it a crack to run for local council. And that's been a really exciting journey as well, being a politician. I don't like that word, but it's a nasty word sometimes. But essentially, being at the table and realizing that change is possible, and that we do, a lot of, probably listeners do live in a democracy, and ultimately we do vote for the change that we want to see, the life that we want to live, the towns, that we want to enjoy, the environments, the beaches that we want to swim in. And like, that is all a choice that we all take every time we go to the ballot box. But I've also realized that the system, whilst it might seem it might seem that we're doomed and that we can't make an impact, like, the way that government works is that in democracies, you just need a majority of people to support what you want to support. And so in the council level, it's been incredible to be able to drive so many significant environmental policies that haven't had the light of day. Like, we've never had a climate strategy where I live. We've never had a waterways strategy or a resilience strategy or a tree and bushland strategy. And to be able to get unanimous support in the most conservative part of Australia, literally ScoMo's, in my ward of the council, the old Australian Prime Minister who infamously brought a lump of coal into Parliament. If that change can happen in my own community, and if we can sort of achieve that, I'm sure across the world and across our region, we can really keep lifting that policy ambition and just finding the reasons why we need to do it. So yeah, it's been a really hopeful journey with that. And I think the other main takeaway from filming, going back to what I learnt, is just how important young people are in these conversations, because we do have all of these new ideas, all of these different ways of thinking. And a lot of the time, young people are always disregarded, or there's different ways to engage young people. And I think a lot of the time it is through a very tokenistic, and I've been the benefactor and also have, experienced it negatively, where I am the token young person sometimes in a room or on a panel. And sometimes you just have to make the most of it. But other times it makes you think, like, is this actually making a difference? And I think a lot of the time when we think about engaging young people, we view it as a nice to have, or okay, I'm ticking that box and, good on me. But actually, young people have the most incredible ideas and the most incredible different ways of thinking and view an outlook on the world, that we should actually view young people as a massive resource and a massive way to sort of help to solve some of these challenges. So it shouldn't be a negative to involve young people to get them into real leadership positions. It should be a great strength to actually create that intergenerational change, because young people do bring something to the table that has been missing, and potentially why we're in a lot of the messes of what we're facing now.
Now, keen to talk about the Blue Minds Youth Ocean Leadership, but to do that, I suppose we need to introduce Surfers for Climate. Tell us overall what their purpose is and the role that you see outdoor athletes play in activism.
I would say, to answer the role, and then, really keen to share what we're doing with Surfers for Climate. The role I think athletes play is the love that we all have for our own part of the woods that we get to adventure, get to compete in, get to enjoy. And how do you share that love and sort of build that bridge from love into action? Because I think a lot of the time when people are sort of trying to advocate for change, it is this place of fear or this place of anger. And that's not is what's going to bring new people into the tent. Well, that's where I think athletes are really uniquely positioned as well, or anyone, is because if you start from that place of love, you are actually able to bring new people into the tent, because the love that you have for your local beach, I'm sure there's hundreds of people that, live in your community that share that same love. And if you find that same starting point, it is a really great way to get to that place of action and that place of ambition that we really need to drive. And ultimately, all policy is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Overton window and sort of what concept that is, but athletes and people have, the general population have such a big role to play to sort of lift that Overton window or create the Overton window and lift that policy ambition. Because ultimately, like, and I've experienced it, getting into council now, like, politicians want to get elected and they want to keep their jobs. And every time they do decide what policies are they going to do, they're doing that because they think that's how they're going to get votes. So as athletes, I'm sure everyone listening, has a sport they compete in or recreationally gets involved in something. Like, there is a way to make that an environmental story, a climate story, a plastic story, and use that expertise that you have as an athlete to not pretend to be a, doctorate or an expert in whatever the latest scientific field or technology solution is. You're an expert in your own life and lived experience. So you are actually the greatest messengers to drive the change. Because, for example, my story with plastics, I'm not an expert in the latest a little bit now, but back when I was, training and competing high-level water polo, I had no clue about the latest technological innovations to, make plastic out of seaweed or the Global Plastics Treaty. But I just knew from a storytelling standpoint, there was plastic in my local bay and we need to do something about it. And I met with the Prime Minister, I met with the state MPs, with ministers. Like, I was just sharing that story and having those touch points because it is that expertise that we have in our own lived experience. So yeah, athletes, everyone plays such a big role to play to really start from that place of love that we do share and that place of positivity. And that's exactly what Surfers of Climate is pushing and driving, is the love that surfers have for their ocean. And how do you, again, connect the dots through that place of education to know what the ocean's going through. The ocean absorbs 90% of the excess heat generated by global heating. It absorbs 30% of the extra carbon. So the ocean is going through so many different challenges, and surfers are at the front lines. Sometimes it leads to great swells, which is good. But it is a really exciting organisation to be a part of and to, represent, is just that love that Australians have for that surfing culture. So we're partnered with Surfing Australia, and there's so many different ways to sort of start to build those dots between the love into action. And the one, one of the massive success stories of Surfers of Climate was actually getting offshore oil and gas and deep sea mining banned in New South Wales coastal waters, which was, and same as the PEP 11, big campaign and the fight for the bite. So there's been so many different organisations across Australia work and sort of mobilise the surfing community, Surf Rider Foundation as well. And yeah, it's an exciting sort of place to be in Australia at the moment, when we are finding ways to tap into that love that Australians have when it comes to surfing into a place of action. And yeah, very grateful that met Josh, the CEO of Surfers of Climate, at, coincidentally, JFK's daughter did Caroline Kennedy did a breakfast in Canberra when she was the ambassador, and we both met there, and we're like, okay, there's an interesting sort of opportunity to sort of partner up and build something under this incredible sort of charity umbrella that Blue Minds sits under. So Blue Minds was the creation of myself with the work that I've had in the ocean and environment space, with Cooper Chapman, who was a pro surfer and does a lot of work in the mental health space, wrote a book, and does a lot in youth education with mental health. So we came together to create this program and framework. And it's been incredible to see the impact that we've had the last year and a half since we launched.
With Blue Minds, you release an annual impact report, and you've spoken quite a lot about it already now. And I like how you make a very specific statement around the focus on Gen Zs and the importance on that. There's another aspect that you do talk about, the youth, that I'm keen to get your thoughts on, because it's something we've covered on the podcast quite a few times prior, is the impact of eco-anxiety, and in particular on youth.
Yeah, massive. It is. The research it's pointing, I mean, the environment's been a number one and top three concern for young people for years and years. There was a research paper that came out back in 2023 that said that 2 in 3 young Australians' mental health has been impacted by eco-anxiety and climate distress. And that was what really motivated Cooper and I to bring our worlds together, because we have been mates for a number of years and have been speaking at schools me sort of talking about, hey, how do you take action for the ocean, which makes you feel good. Cooper talking about gratitude, mindfulness, that makes you feel good as well. Let's bring it together and tackle this eco-anxiety problem. And we partnered with Origin, the world's leading youth mental health research org, to validate our framework and approach. And the impact we've had to reduce eco-anxiety, drive that agency, drive that action has been incredible as we've been rolling out workshops to 14,500 plus students in person across the country. And we've got major plans this next year. And we've just launched a Blue Minds Academy as well, because our theory of change is essentially, how do we create the next generation of ocean and environmental leaders? And you can't do that. You can't get to that place of action until you address the eco-anxiety and that starting point that most young Australians are at, which is this place of apathy, this place of concern. So we've got different ladders of engagement. And the first is sort of looking at digital education, which is where the films, the storytelling, we've got a partnership with cool.org where we've got lessons that are being seen by tens of thousands of students every school term. Rising Up's been seen by over 100,000 students. And so that's sort of first base to move from that apathy that I can't make a difference into, hey, maybe I can. And then the next sort of pillar are these in-person workshops, which we've run to 14,500 students now all over the country. And we've got a massive wait list, and I'm always on the road talking, which is why my voice is always feels like it's about to go. That workshop is essentially, how do you go from that place of maybe I can make a difference to, all right, I want to, I'm fired up, what can I do? And then what we've been able to just launch is a Blue Minds Academy, which is essentially to go from that place of I want to I am. And how do we build the capabilities, the leadership, incubate these projects that could change the world? And we've just launched our first cohort. We've got 18 student projects all across Australia, plus a wildcard in Bali, because the incredible idea that this person has, but all over regional areas like the Northern Territory to Wagga, like not just around the ocean, but inland as well. And essentially, like these young leaders, we want to help incubate. We've got incredible guest speakers lined up for the 8-week program. And then we're going to do like a demo day Shark Tank, help to get them connected with philanthropy, because those young people ultimately will then influence their schools, influence their communities. And then it just becomes this beautiful cycle. So that's sort of our theory of change. But that eco-anxiety is, I see it when I go into, the classrooms and the school halls, and you ask a question, you say, who's concerned about the future of the ocean and the planet? And most young people's hands go up, because young people are just so concerned, but concern without a pathway to action creates paralysis. So we do really need to showcase that pathway of how do you practically make a difference? How do you not change the world, but change your own world? And I think that's where my experience, navigating change, driving different projects, and similarly with Cooper's, we've been able to really find a beautiful sweet spot. And and it's been such a fun journey with Blue Minds, and just to see the impact we've already had in the young people's projects that have already been created without sort of that structured pathway. It's been really cool. And the best thing about Blue Minds, the way that like Cooper and I both went to public high schools, and the way that we've structured it is to make sure the workshops are free, and that all of our opportunities for engagement are all completely free. So we're not excluding anyone. We're just able to really just equitably solve this problem across the country. So that's a bit of a nutshell of what we're doing with Blue Minds. It's been so much fun. And we're just always traveling and always engaging with young people, and just trying to build that inspiration and just build this next gen of leaders that I'm afraid that if we don't do this work, I just think this generation's going to be stuck in this apathy and this paralysis.
And as a fellow Gen Zer, I think I've always been really passionate about the environment, and it's always been hard, talking to people who kind of aren't, or who are like, why aren't you taking action, or what's stopping you? And there is that kind of paralysis of, this is so depressing, I don't know if I want to engage. And I think, similarly, there are a lot of people, I guess, probably like me and you, who do see hope and see that there is a possibility for change. And, something like Blue Minds, where it's free and accessible, being able to guide these people, I think is just so important. And there are so many people who are anxious, but actually because they care. And so it's really great to harness those people. And I think that's amazing what you're doing with that. Going into these schools and universities, you guys are kind of the experts with the workshops you're running, but what are some important lessons that these young people have taught you?
Oh, great question. I think the biggest thing that, because we've been all over the country, and I think the common thread is that young people are ready. And I think it's easy to not to sort of potentially give up on young people and just think, oh, adults are going to solve this problem. I mean, potentially to some extent, but as I said, like young people are so untapped. And the biggest lesson is like young people all across the country are ready. As soon as you just give them that, you don't know what you don't see. And as soon as you just say, hey, just because you're young, just because you're not in a position of power, you're not rich enough, knowledgeable enough, old enough, you might think you can't do something, but being young is actually the greatest superpower. And your different way of thinking is what is actually really needed in the world right now. And just go and change your own world. And just that belief and that little nudge, it's just like a tinderbox ready to erupt into a massive flame and fire. And that's been the biggest thing that we've learnt, and why we've been really inspired to sort of, try to raise money to get the academy going and just, keep trying to scale the work, because young people are ready to be, to step up into what they need to do and what we all need to do, which is not to do everything. We just all need to do something. And I think you just have to really, focus on that. I think the other thing we've learned is also just the love that Australians have for the ocean as well. It's been quite diverse around the country. Like we're just in Adelaide down in South Australia, and it's the only place in the country where young people say that they love jetty jumping as their love for the ocean. Where over in remote, or not too remote, but sort of down the south coast of Western Australia, they love their whale sharks because they get to see them over there. So Australians just have so many unique connections to the ocean. And I think that's been the other, the key thing that I've learned from young people is that, but also the innovation. Like, yeah, the solutions that young people are already driving in their own communities, like young people are already stepping up. It's just giving them the belief and I think our unique approach as well is to speak to full year groups. So we won't just speak to the, converted, the environment students. We do other sessions where we sort of really help them out, but we really just want to try to change the culture. So we'll speak to 200 year 10 boys, just before lunch, and, be able to engage them and, create that cultural shift in the school and in their year group, which is really important to do because we do need to bring new people into the tent.
Having been to New Zealand, you should know that not only do New Zealanders like jetty jumping, they have their own Manu world champs. So
yeah, well, in Cronulla, so that bay, there's a lot of Manus that the boys do, and so it is it's I need to get back over to New Zealand. I absolutely love the country there, and and you've got such an incredible ocean domain, and I think you've got maybe like the fourth or fifth largest ocean domain in the world. New Zealand, like it is massive. The blue economy over there is enormous,
with its own challenges, of course, with bottom trawling and gas mining and everything else, which we're not going to deep dive into this episode. But Pal, moving on, how did you find yourself in council?
Good question. I have brought down the average age by a number of decades, I think. No, but ultimately, like, if you want to make a difference, and for me, like, when I had the idea for Blue Minds before council, and I just feel like if I'm going around speaking to tens of thousands of people a year in person, like trying to inspire people to look after their own backyard, if my own backyard is, one of the worst, most polluted areas in the country, and we've got really bad environmental track records, it's quite disingenuous to just be a talker and say, hey, do this. And I just really think it's important to just focus on doing, and not, focusing that energy on what you can actually practically deliver. So the big impetus for me were two of our local bays are poor and very poor. And they've stuck at that because for council who control the stormwater and the water quality that flows into these bays, there's just been a complete neglect on investment and focus on that. So that was the platform that I ran on, and I said, hey, vote for me. I'm going to clean the waterways up. And that was enough to build the excitement in my community as a very conservative area and give me a chance to make a difference. And I'm pleased to say I'm having a red hot crack at it. But it's it's just been incredible to learn how policy can come together and how change definitely is possible. You just have to back that, ultimately politicians work for you. And so I've got some really incredible feedback and ideas from people in my community that I'm able to champion and represent. So that's sort of how I got into council. And it's been a good year and a half now since being a councillor, and it's been a lot of fun, a lot of learnings as well.
You've kind of gone from like education with Blue Minds to politics. What are kind of some of the key intersections, and what things have surprised, like what times have you been able to use your skills from educating young people to being on council? Where have you found the intersections there, and what surprised you?
It's a two-way feedback loop. So for young people, it's understanding policy, and for young people that have ideas, it's like, here are the levers that you can pull. Here's actually how to drive the change instead of just having the idea. So I think the practicalities have really helped to motivate young people, firstly, to know that that is a pathway you can take. You can get elected at a young age. You can get involved, have meetings with your local representatives, and also, drive the solutions you want to see. And vice versa, like the energy that young people are bringing to the table just fires me up to bring that energy into my local council meetings that go very late. And it's a space that doesn't usually have a lot of positivity and energy, but I'm able to bring that because my day job in the work I do with Blue Minds and my film just energizes me so much. And I feel like it just carries over into the hundreds of pages of council papers I have to read each week. So it's a two-way sort of streak. And the more that I learn as well from other areas, being able to travel with Blue Minds a lot, I'm able to bring some really good ideas back into my hometown and just take the best from all these areas. And an example of that is over in Fremantle in Western Australia. They had these beach cleanup kits at all the different beaches where you could go pick up a pair of picker things. As you can tell, I didn't write the policy, and go sort of on your beach walk and pick up rubbish with this sort of imagine a big robot hand, whatever that thing is called, a picker, I'm sure. And I was able to take a photo of that, bring it back to council, get a policy adopted, and then now we've got our own, which is pretty cool. Similarly, we've got signage all over our beaches to say, hey, don't litter, and all these different other positive messages that have reduced litter up to 66% in the first year in different areas. So it's been really cool to be able to take that knowledge and those ideas back to my own town and implement it, but vice versa, take what I'm doing in my own area and then spread that around the country too. So it's sort of a nice like two-way feedback loop.
And do you have any recommendations for young people that would consider wanting to represent their community, and maybe not necessarily council, but in other ways?
I would say 100%. The thing I'd probably do as the starting point is mapping out what is your community that you're already a part of, like what is your circle of influence. So for example, when I was playing high-level water polo, I was involved in Water Polo Australia. They put up like a climate strategy, and I sort of helped to see that come to life. So thinking about what are all those different groups you're a part of, whether your sporting club, your workplace, your friends and family, your local area, your church society, youth group, whatever it is, like what is that circle that you're uniquely a part of? And that is where you are a leader already. Like you are, some of the most important stakeholders in your circle. So it's like, how do you actually, you don't need a title, you don't need a seat at the table. Everyone has their own table, and it's just a matter of like feasting on, what's within their own control, where I think a lot of people don't take action because they wait for, or they think the only way to make an impact is to be at the table, as in a formal title as a councillor or an MP or a CEO or whatever it is. But you've all got your own table, like whatever role that you have, find purpose, find an ability to drive change in that, because there is so much we can all do. And as I said earlier, like we can't all do everything, but we can all do something. And working out where to drive that something is your own table, is your own circle of influence. And that's where I've seen the most incredible success stories in Australia and around the world has been from that focusing on what's in your own control, what's in your own backyard. And backyard, metaphorically speaking, is in your circle of influence. And just focusing on that, because ultimately that's all you can do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think as well, like if something where even just like if you're, an office, like an office space, just pushing for a recycling bin in an office, or maybe like one, if just your kid's classroom to have, a sustainable education, something small like that, while it might not make a big difference, feel like it's not making a big difference in the grand scheme of the world, that's where things start, and that's where change happens. And I think so your circle of influence is a really great point. So I really appreciate that.
Exactly. And that ripple effect as well. It's like you get the recycling in your workplace, it's like that's going to change the lives of all your colleagues. And then they'll think about recycling differently. It's like even your individual actions, like taking the keep cup, when you get a coffee, everyone in the line's like, oh, okay, that's normal. Like the reason why we don't have, going back to that Overton window and the policy and the lack of ambition that, a lot of policymakers around the world have, it's because we don't have the general population is practicing what they want to see and creating the future that they want to see and want to live in. So every single action that we take, whilst it might seem small and insignificant, it does create these ripple effects. And ultimately enough ripples do create a wave. And that's where we do get those massive wins. And going back to I'm sure a lot of people listening are, athletes and sort of have that connection to sport. It's like, that's such a great starting point. Is your sporting club getting a new uniform every year? Like Australia's the largest producer of textile waste per person in the world. And we're the second largest producer of plastic waste per person in the world. So yes, there's these big global challenges, but until we sort things in our own backyard, how do we expect the rest of the world to also solve these challenges? And if we can actually sort it out here, it does free up the capacity to then focus our solutions on, a lot of these other countries that do contribute, more metric tons to these problems. But yeah, you can't sort of point fingers and blame others if your own backyard's super polluted. And so yeah, there's so many different ways to create change, and you just have to take that first step and get started.
So what's your current focus now? Any particular goals for the next 6-9 months?
Yeah, I mean, there's always something. I mean, just scaling Blue Minds, like we're in such an exciting, time to sort of tackle this problem. Outside of Blue Minds and the work I do at council, I do have a new feature documentary coming out in June, which is it's really exciting. The people who just produced David Attenborough's Ocean documentary last year have funded and made this. So for someone with no film experience to be able to work with some of the best people in the industry, the guys just finished the sound mix of it, won an Academy Award for Mad Max. So we've got the most incredible crew, and I'm so grateful to everyone that sort of jumped on with this project. And that's all about plastic and how Australia has grown to be this plastic country. So it's called the Plastic Country. It's going to be playing at a couple festivals over June, July, and then have a big release to Australia, and hopefully can get it across to New Zealand and sort of get over there and be able to get over to New Zealand without a water polo related context and be able to actually enjoy your beautiful country. That's going to be a really exciting release. And then the other sort of interesting piece for the rest of the year is how Australia does have a really big role with COP31 this year in terms of being the negotiating president. The Presidency Youth Climate Champion is an Australian that just got appointed, Sally Higgins. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities throughout this next sort of 6 months to really try to drive that change on that global policy level as well, whilst not losing sight on what's, directly within my control in my own community. So it's going to be a very fun year, and just keep having a crack and seeing where it goes.
Carl, it's been an absolute privilege to have you on the show. An important lesson you've taught us is the importance of community, which is what provides us purpose. So if anyone's lacking, just look within. And what's really stuck with me is your mantra that the emphasis should always be on changing your own world, not the world. So many nuggets, so many good lessons in this. So we know how incredibly busy you are. So it's again, a real privilege and pleasure to have you on the show. So thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. It was a very fun chat.